All right, everybody. I am Jeff from Fuller Embroidery Works. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. And today we're going to be going through a little bit of the ZSK Basepac software. For those of you that don't know, I do their training for them in the US. And Justin has gotten a trial version.
Yes.
That thing that you plug into the computer that unlocks the key. It's like the key to the car, right? Yeah. He's even going to hold it up. So, the shiny
I got
cap
the
of
cap here.
it. So, today we're going to be going through it a little bit. And the best way to go through it is to just digitize something. And then Justin will ask questions and there will be comments along the way. Everything that we're going to be going over does translate well to any software if you're going to be looking at theory. But today we're specifically going to be going into the Basepac software. Before we get too far, though, we're definitely going to welcome Doug joining us from Overcast, Los Angeles. And if you guys are, go ahead and drop in the comments where you're watching from. And if you guys have any questions at all, be sure to ask those as well. All right. So we have, go ahead, Justin. I'll let you grab them.
We have a couple more coming in. We have New York checking in.
Awesome.
We have Frank from across the pond in England.
Welcome.
And we have Grand Rapids, Michigan checking in.
Awesome.
I'm sure it's very, very frigid there, from what I hear.
It very well could be. It usually is. Let me grab my. I'm going to go entire screen. So hopefully nobody sends me any inappropriate messages. I'm looking at Justin. As we go along, because they do pop up. But I'm going to share my whole screen because there's a lot of like subcontext menus that I'm afraid won't pop up and you guys won't be able to see. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll go ahead and add it to scene here, and then we're going to do the magical shift. Oh, I was the big person today. Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. That one. All right, so I'm going to hide that little thing. This is the Basepac software. We're greeted by this lovely screen, and Justin's clicking on things. It's totally not going to be distracting. Give you a hard time. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start a new design, and this actually, you save a lot of design information directly on the first screen. I'll go ahead and run through a little bit of that here. We've got our design numbers, so you can actually do versioning in the files, which is fairly interesting. Design name, description, order, you get your customer name, customer number, created by, changed by. So if you have somebody come by and edit it, you can throw in a price, base material, search phrase, and comments. So one of the things that's interesting about Basepac is that it uses kind of the Windows file system for design library management. And I don't really use it that much for that, but they have a setup where you can search by comments, phrases, materials, tags, that kind of stuff in there. Here I actually put in my machine. So I have the Sprint 8. If I click on that, there's different models of machines that I can put in here. And where the Basepac software is, it gets a little bit different is if you have a machine that has special options and you put that in, then you can digitize for those special options. So particularly for this machine, if it was a multi-head, the traveling distance would be important because I can do head selection where the software will automatically turn off one head and turn on another head. So I can do that but I have to make sure that I have a machine that supports that. So if you're digitizing for head selection, you kind of need to know exactly what machine it goes on. And then we have our starting needle and the head type. So this is if you have like a chenille machine and a chenille embroidery combo, you can actually pick whether or not you're using the F head or the K head. Doug asks, can it output for Bairden? It's not in the machine list, but I'm pretty sure we'll check on that in a minute. So I know it goes DST, the Z00. I'll have to look at the other formats that it supports. I don't know that off the top of my head. We also have our additional functions. So this is like if you have, if you want to be able to control the RPM of the machine, so you can actually set a speed distance. It does output DST, yes. You can do head selection, the sequins, the laser, the wire guard, which is their technical embroidery. They have the roll to roll device. This little guy right here it says lock stitch. That actually it's like preserving small stitches. So if you have small stitches in the file, this will preserve them to the machine instead of the machine cleaning them out. Um, and then that's pretty much that menu. So we'll go ahead and pop that up. I have it preset for the Madeira thread that I use. We're going to import a picture from file, and I'm going to drop to my downloads here, and we're going to grab a piece of artwork that Justin is vaguely familiar with. I made this for him here. But basically, this is Justin's logo, and by I made it, ChatGPT made it, but we digitized it. So
Jeff GPT.
yeah, I went ahead and brought it in, and we'll digitize it here. It's already at scale, but before we get too far, that's actually going to bug me. So I'm going to go to File, Export. There we go. We've got Z00, we've got DST, ZB, TBF. It actually does have the Barrett and FDR-U, the KSM, the EXP, TAP for Happy, Toyota, Juki, Fortron? Ooh, Fortron, and then the brothers. I don't think I've ever seen a Fortron machine. So now that we've got our artwork in here, we'll go ahead and go into, they have different modes. There's a little P over here on the top left-hand corner. That's like punching mode. That's how I think about it. The S is, think of it like stitch edit. So to go into the S mode, you're going to manually manipulate stitches. Not objects, stitches. So if you need to move a stitch, that's where you're going to do it. But if you move a stitch on an object and then you change the object, it's going to regenerate the stitches. I hope that made sense. Then they have the M, which is monogram mode, and D, which is drawing mode. So we're going to go into punching mode. And up here we have our insert mode. If you want to digitize or you want to do something manually, you have to have that in there, the insert mode. If you want to do like editing, you take that off, and then that allows you to select objects and manipulate nodes. You're with me so far, Justin?
So far, yeah.
I feel like I'm talking 100 miles an hour.
So from what the little I know about this program, I hear that this one is kind of where you want to make decisions prior to digitizing. Is that correct?
That is a fair assessment. So, what I've found when it comes to digitizing, a lot of times you'll like plot out what you want to do ahead of time. This one, I like to know what I'm going to do ahead of time. Looking at the object, I already know, back to front. So I'm going to start with the fills. Then I'm probably going to do a little bit of shading, and then we're going to do the letters, and then we're going to start with outlines. But you want to make sure that you're going in kind of a sequential order, because going back sometimes can be difficult and easy at the same time. It's different. It's different. It's to move things around. It's different than how you would do it in Wilcom. And when you approach designs, I like to think of it like there's a different philosophy. So when you go into Wilcom, you're kind of digitizing the objects. Here, you're more digitizing like you're thinking like the machine would be running.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best way I can explain it. So I typically start. You always have to kind of point the position that you're going to begin at. It's kind of like you're moving the head to that position, if you think about it that way. Like you're going to start here, so it's moving the head here. And then anywhere I click right now is basically a manual stitch. So I can back those up, but that's basically, once you put down that first point, it's almost like dropping a needle penetration. But I backed it all the way up there just by hitting the backspace key because I wanted to change the needle. So as you can see, I put a needle change in there. Now we're starting with needle number 2. And I'm just going to come over here and we'll go ahead and click, and that's going to drop that needle position. And you can see up here, On the upper right here, this is basically your stitch display. So when you start this up, you're looking at it. It's like a stitch list of all the stitches that are going to be in that object. So I've placed that first, and now I want to digitize an object, and so I've entered kind of the complex fill. Now with this, I can come up here and you can have presets, and you can actually put in as many of those as you want. So those are kind of like your, if you had something for puff, you could save it as puff, and then that would be all your settings for that. So I just selected that ahead of time, and now I'll come around and just start drawing the object here. And for this to do corner node, it's a double click. So to do that, to stop, you just have to double click. Right click brings up this subcontext menu, which I actually find really helpful because I don't have to like travel really far to get to it. I can just right click, bring that up, and now I can set my stitch direction. I can change my endpoint here and hit enter, and it's going to generate the stitches. And you can see how it generated that whole list on the right. If I want to back into the object, I can just scroll the mouse wheel, and it brings me, it travels me through the object.
Huh.
And if I want to finish it again, I just click, and then I can move to the run stitch tool and come over and click here and hit enter, and now move to the next tool. So it always starts the last point you left off.
So that's automatic then.
Yes. So I just did a run stitch over there, but let's say, I finished that run stitch and now I want to move over here. I'm going to click, and you can see it put a stitch. So when I talk about, you think about it like the machine runs, that's more what it is everywhere you go, it's going to, like in a design, you typically travel with stitches. So you just have to put a little bit more thought into where am I going to start? Where am I going to finish?
Gotcha.
And bounce around. So Justin hasn't like thrown shade at me too much yet. Go in here, I'll throw my stitch angle about like that, and then I'll end down here. Let me know if you have questions at all, Justin.
So the fact that it is kind of a more of a base where you're making the decision on stitch types and whatnot as you're going along, is there any type of resequencing in this software?
There is. It's handled differently. So I know you were looking forward to that answer. It is. So as you can see here, we've got, they call it the film strip, and it's up here on the left-hand side. And as you can see, it's all one object right now. And that's because I basically digitized it in that way. So this right up here is like, they call it a mark block. So if I travel, let's say I'm at this object right here, and I'm at the end of this object, I hit enter, I can insert a mark block. And now you can see that it opened that into its own segment.
Oh, okay.
And so then I can adjust the segment orders based off of that. But like on the machine, I still need to make sure that my start and my end points are going to line up after I do the resequencing. Right. Because it will put travel stitches, or I may need to put in travel stitches.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like it's a different, when I think about it and when I actually go through and I do it, to me, it's like a different mental model when I go in, that you have to think about it just a little bit differently and how you're going to approach and build your objects, because it's going to affect it later down the road.
Okay.
You haven't like thrown anything at me yet, so I think that it's all making sense.
It's making sense so far.
All right. So now that I'm at the end of the object here, you can actually throw in manual lock stitches, which I do sometimes. Or it has a lock stitch feature in there that you can program the lock stitches, but I just put in a trim. Now I can come up here and we can change to a different color. We'll go to 4. Right. So you can see here that we put in that trim and now we move to needle 4. So it does on the right hand side, you've got your running stitch list.
Not everybody's as ancient as me and been around in the Stone Ages when we used to digitize off of tablets and cartooning the artwork 6:1. But this does remind me of that process because you where I got my start was I was cartooning for the in-house digitizer at the
Mm-hmm.
shop I was at, and in the artwork prep was most of the decisions on how the design was going to be digitized. You actually would draw in your angles for your satins. Um, so when you actually got it to the tablet, and back then it was you digitize as you went, and as you finished portions of it, that's the way it was digitized. It wasn't going back like the on-screen stuff that you see here, where there's all kinds of different options to resequence or manipulate objects within the design. It was the decisions made as they're digitizing, actually plotting angles, and um, it's almost like a finality to it as you're working. So a lot of the decision making was done beforehand or in the artwork prep. So this is this kind of reminds me of that process, just kind of an updated version on a on-screen version of it.
It's totally not cryptic. There we go. That's okay. So again, we're just moving through and making the decisions of, what needs to be what and where.
So Doug asked how old the software is. Sister-in-law has a ZSK and had some software with it, but I actually was talking to Jeff about this earlier. I don't know what the timing was, but I know this is a software that ZSK actually bought out of recent. Uh,
From what I understand. So this is it's made by GIS and it goes back quite a ways. Their EPC software and this software, they're on this is version 10.5 and it started at version 1, I think. Well, I mean, they all start at 1, right? But it would be, yeah, probably back into the 90s. Generations Pro. Yeah. This, I believe, was more, well, it's always been a little more ZSK focused because this was developed in Germany. So now I'm going to go back here. I did this J, just looking at it. I think that's actually a little bit more than I wanted to put into it. So we'll just take, that's why it's doing that. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So like I can just pull, if I want to change this at all, I can just kind of delete the points. And then I just have to make sure I go back in the right order here. So I want to come to, I just thinking to myself, I wanted to end this J at this edge of this item and not where I did. So I'm going to back that up one more. And so you can see like I can go back and I can re-edit based off of the objects themselves.
okay.
Which is kind of nice. You can just roll back and you can kind of delete points and change things. So from there, I believe I ended right there. Sometimes I just, to double check, I'll do that. So that works for me. And I'll go in here. This is, of course, I'm going to set this as a satin stitch. And I want to go into their parameters. And I'm going to go to center line and I'm going to change this to like a 1.2 maybe.
So Is there different inputs as far as satin stitches on this as well?
Um, yes. So you can make pretty much any object into a satin stitch, but they call it pairwise. But that's basically point counterpoint. And then they have center line, which is what you would expect for a satin. And then, of course, you can do, they have it structured where you can add cuts to an object. Typically, when I digitize, I use the center line pairwise, and sometimes I'll use this when I'm making satin objects.
Gotcha.
Probably right about there. Go ahead and do that. And we'll do a run stitch. We'll run around here to right there.
So every time you add or finish an object, that menu pops up, so you can choose what you're going to be going on to and what type of stitch comes next.
Actually, no, that's not it. Actually, that menu pops up when I right click.
Oh, okay. So I've noticed that if you've ever experienced using different softwares, I think the main component that is a little bit different depending on what software you're using is um, how you input straight and curved lines, and that could be the most learning curve issue, bouncing from either from going to a new software or bouncing back and forth between softwares. You have softwares that left and right clicks give you straight and curved lines or nodes. You have right clicks that will kind of be the enter or the finish object. So yeah, that's one of the things that I know when I've either start learning a new software or bouncing back and forth. It can be frustrating because like you're used to hitting right click being a curve node maybe in one software, and then it pulls up a menu in this software. So I think that's one of the main, as far as the real basic aspects of software, is the left and right clicks and what they do, or what hotkey or what button ends your element, or whatever, how they call it, generate stitches,
Yep.
close shape, end element, whatever that particular software calls it.
And that, I mean, honestly, I think that between that and kind of the mental shift of how I need to think about it when I go about building objects and doing things,
Mm-hmm.
those were the two things that were, I don't want to say they held me back a little bit, but it's a change from what you're used to, and
Right.
you have to kind of learn to think a little bit differently.
Yeah, just hearing the double click that he's doing, that would be something that's definitely something to get used to, for sure.
And then once you do it, and then you go into another software, you tend to put a lot of nodes in a really tiny area. I'm not going to tell you how I know that, but you tend to put a lot of tiny nodes in a really small area.
Or you jump one software and you right click to do a curve node, but then it ends the shape on another software, and you keep on ending the shape when you don't want to.
Yep. Yeah, we might have been through some struggle bus at some point. But all in all, like it's fairly easy to use. It's just figuring it out in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to show you the pair. They call it pairwise, which is basically their point counterpoint. And something that's a little bit different about it is you'll notice that instead of doing like left side, right side, I'm doing right, left, left, right.
Oh, okay. So you stagger the points as you're going.
Because you can see the line as it grew it. comes off the side that I just finished on.
That kind of makes sense because it's kind of guiding you on how the shape's going to be for the next node, and you just kind of go back and forth to get a better shape. Because I know that's definitely one thing as you're just as a novice digitizer, um, avoiding 100 different nodes in a curve line trying to get that precision. You start learning, oh, if I click here and I can move quite a bit out, and you start learning how it affects those curves or corners, and you can kind of anticipate that a little bit better the more you go.
Yeah. So I'm going to backspace just a couple here. And let's say I want to do, right, left, and then I want to do right, left again. It swaps them. So you can do it. It's just kind of confusing because they do cross.
Okay.
But you can do it kind of the traditional way. But I've come to really like having it come off that way. And I specifically did this object in that format, just so you can see that it does handle it a little bit differently. And now you can kind of see how we've got this moving around here. And I did make an error. So I ended there and I thought I ended here. And so now I've got this long jump stitch coming across the screen because my end point didn't line up with my start point. So I can fix that in one of two ways. I could go all the way back to between these two objects and I could digitize a run stitch, which I can just do that by scrolling my mouse. And so we can see we're at the end here. Now I can hit enter, and now I can digitize a run stitch that comes down to that point. So that's one way I could fix it, but the actual way that I'm going to do it here is I'm going to come to the end of this object. I'm going to go back one, and I can just tell it I want my start point up here.
Okay, so you can move start and end points.
Yep. It's just they don't display like they do. They don't display like they do in other software. You don't really see it on this object. But I can
It's not
see
a matter of moving a node or a function node, like in a lot of the other popular softwares.
Yeah. So again, it's not, I wouldn't call it right or wrong. It's just different in how you do it. So that's the way I look at it and the way that I've digitized for it. I'm just checking my watch here. But now, we finished this object. The last stitch is there. I'm going to throw down a couple of lock stitches because I didn't turn on the auto lock stitches in the design menu, and I'll end that. So now we've got, if we look at this, we've got our black, we've got our blue, we've got our white background. We still have some outlines to do here. So we've got a black outline here in the middle, blue outline on the inside of that, a little bit of shading, and we'll just kind of keep moving through here. So, but you can see how, like, I haven't done anything, so it's been building this ever since we put that last block mark in there.
Okay.
Right? Like now we only have two, so it's been building all the colors into one block.
So the fact that it's in one block, there's no breaking it apart into.
There is. So I can go to like make automatically and I can say, hey, at every needle change, at every trim, I want you to break it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it's just different in how it functions and how you move through everything.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to do blue next, and we'll go back to this kind of blue right here. And I'm going to do a run stitch in here. And you can see how it kind of did that needle change icon because we did a needle change after the trim. And I'll come in and do some of this distress work.
I always like distress looking logos because you don't have to be so precise when you're digitizing.
Yeah, and this one, like, so I've done a few of these. This one I don't like how the AI kind of threw the J over the top of the logo out here, so I tucked it back in. And I think when you're doing, distressed and how it looks, you can really just make those calls and not have to worry that much about it.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a project right now where creating some antiquish distressed type files where there's a lot easier where if something's slightly off, it's not going to be as apparent, or You kind of you have the leeway as you're digitizing that. It's like, okay, maybe the functionality of this doesn't work here, and I can kind of just walk across a fill area for pathing purposes. When typically, if you're looking for precision and a fill that you don't want these random stitches walking across it, uh, when you have these distressed type of logos, you can kind of fudge a little bit more, and it's always hidden because it's already kind of chaotic.
Yep. So I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to set the width of this a little bit wider. So we're going to go to like a 2 millimeter, and then we'll rip this around here, the outside edge. That might be too big. We might change our mind later, Justin.
I like how it displays as you're plotting points. It displays the width of this.
Yeah. So like, we ran around, and I can change the width before I end the object, but let's see how that looks. I might stick with it. Yeah, I think I'll stick with it. Oh, my dog came to visit. Go ahead and throw a trim there, and then we'll, yeah, I think we'll run around the outside here. At least with a run stitch to kind of give us a little bit of depth on that, I think.
Gotcha.
Maybe about right here. Yeah, we'll go right there. And then we'll do maybe a little bit of this. Get it a little bit wider here. That's what I'm thinking, Justin. There we go.
Yeah, getting used to that left, right, left, right. That would definitely be something to make you stop and think as you're digitizing this in the first couple times.
Yeah, it definitely took me, and it wasn't even a lot. It just was like, this is going to take some getting used to. There we go. I think I like that.
There you go.
And then, I need to change that. Throw in a trim. We'll come here and we'll do this real quick. We'll just throw a little bit of color there. We'll throw a trim in there too, just for good measure. Yeah, I think I can get behind that. And so then
within elements, you can select and choose stitch lengths or densities, underlays.
Yeah, so let me just go ahead. I put a trim. So if I want to do, like, let's just do this object for fun. So to do that kind of stuff, it comes into, they call it parameters, and it's this little gear icon right here. So here we're not doing a center line, so that doesn't really matter, but we've got our stitch type. So I could change it, like if I wanted it to be divided, I can change the distance, which would be the density. So they run in point system here. So I could go to like a 3.8 if I wanted to be a little more dense. We've got our underlays here. So they've got the running underlay. This is going to be an edge run. The pickup stitches, so any kind of traveling stitches are going to be in the center. And then we've got our active at contour. The distance inset, I want to say, is 0.4 millimeters. Stitch length on the stitch length on it is going to be anywhere from 1 to 4 millimeters based off of the curve. And then here you've got your fill. You can do a single or a double single or a double, just depending. Their underlay, if you take a look here, their standard zigzag actually sits at an angle. To try and, when you're dealing with push and pull, this is kind of push or pulling in a different direction than the top stitches.
Uh-huh.
Try and offset that a little bit so it comes in by default at a different angle. And then if I want to select something, I just take that little insert mode off, and now I can come in here and adjust whatever I need to adjust.
Okay.
So, but right now it's all one big object, right? Because we talked about how those blocks work. So I'm just going to come in here and say make automatically at a trim. And now it's its own object, so I can delete it.
So when you're digitizing, do you keep it all in one block and break it up if you have to, or?
I do, personally. So again, this kind of goes into the mentality of it, right? Like, I know if I'm not sure how I want to digitize something, if I'm not sure on the order, then I'm going to make blocks as I go. Because I'm already kind of in that mental model of I'm going to be shifting things around, so I'm going to pre-block them. If I'm not, if I'm sure the order that I'm going to do it, then I'll just digitize it all and realize, oh, I didn't break any blocks. And then I can make them automatically off of needle changes and trims. But if it's something that I'm like, hey, I'm probably gonna be moving this around, I will, because I can always go back in and insert them later. Right. If I go back into the punch mode and let's say, this object right here, I want to add a block after it, I can do that. I just have to select it and add the block. So it really comes down, do I want to take that extra step when I'm doing it, or do I just want to do it afterwards?
Gotcha.
Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes.
So I think left here, I'm going to go ahead and just do the black outline here. So I'm going to go back to 1, and I'm just going to throw a couple stitches here. Yep, that would be why. Insert mode. Now I can do things. I was like, wait a minute. So we got the needle change. We've got the trim. So now if I come in here, I can do that. But that can be frustrating sometimes when I do that. And I'm just going to check and see it did add that needle change where I didn't want it. So let me go ahead and clear that out. So I got that trim. There. Now I'll throw the trim, and then I'll do the needle change. And now we won't have that. Or no, yeah. I was going to say, are we going to have problems? We'll put it outside. No, we're good. So I'll go ahead and do the structured, just so I can show you that different input, because you did ask that question about it. And then I'm probably going to go in and add some pull compensation to the white because I didn't digitize it far enough out. Yeah, I definitely didn't digitize it far enough out. So let me bring that in a little bit, and I'll follow this white edge. My light for the camera is like right here, and there's a nice glare on my screen. So I'm trying to see where it's at, and I'll just come out and around. And so it's basically like you get the same kind of, I'm going to call it banding or curve behavior that they have in the software. It's just where that's going to fall in the points when you're putting them. But when you get here near the end, like that, now we'll go in and we'll add our angle lines.
Oh, okay.
So it just depends. Like I said, if I wanted to, I could do that in the pairwise. I could try and do it as a satin, but. And now we've got that there, and it goes around the outside edge. So we'll go ahead and sometimes I kind of forget where my last point was, so I'll just do that, and we'll do this. And we'll go ahead and throw a trim in there. So now we've got the outside edge of that, and I wanted to go back in Let me grab the white here. So we'll go in and I'll talk to you a little bit about pull compensation because they handle that differently in this software. Let me go over here to covering stitches. I moved it over like it would be closer to you so you can see it better. Their pull compensation is percentage based. So we have our factor percentage, and I'm just going to put it at something like ridiculously high. So we'll go like 85%. And then you have your upper bound, and that's where it's going to stop. So it's going to be 85% of the width of the object in that area, and then the upper bound is going to be up, basically up until we hit that. So if I want it to be 0.2 pull compensation, I can set that number high, and then I have the percentage that's going to push it past that number, but then that number is going to block it. It totally made sense to you, Justin?
So instead of digitizing stopping short, you can actually put that in the
yeah, like I can go in, and if I want to, because they just, the way they talk about it is different. So the upper bound would be like what you would set normally as pull comp.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to hit that limit. So if I go to a factor of, let's say 85, like I did previously, 85%, that's 85% of the width of that object, and then the upper bound is going to be where it stops. So if I did like even ridiculously higher, like 125%, I don't think it'll let me do that because I think it'll only go up. Yeah. So I can go up to 185% of the width of the object, but then I say I actually just want it to be 0.2. So it'll stop at 0.2. No. Yeah. He nodded, and then it says, yeah, you can only go up to 99.
Oh.
So if I go to 99% of the width of the object, it'll stop at 0.2. So, and the reason why they do a percentage based is that's based off of, like, if you digitize a circle, then your percentage base kind of comes in a little bit more, because as you go wider in that the circle gets more oblong, it throws more pull compensation in there.
Right.
So that is digitizing in Basepac. I'd call it 101, but I don't know. Questions, Justin?
So, I mean, I guess the approach, like I said before, a little bit more mindful of how you're digitizing at first, and not relying on, I guess, bells and whistles of manipulating the file after the fact.
Well, I can manipulate the file after the fact.
Right.
It's just it's in a different way.
Right.
So it really comes down to, like, what are you comfortable with? I'm going to go ahead and pull that down and bring us up. So it really comes down to, like, what are you comfortable with? And when I look at this, it's just I digitize for it in a different way than I would when I approach a different software.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're like, I'm a pro now. I could take off and.
It would take me a couple of times to. I know I'd be clicking things and be like, why isn't ending my element here, or generating stitches.
I do really like the right click menu though, because that when you're going along and instead of having to jump really far to find a tool, you can just right click and click on
it.
Yeah,
that's definitely an element that keeping right in your kind of your digitizing window or your frame of reference right there. You're not having to go and find these menus and these other softwares that are lined up on your left, on your top, on your bottom.
Yep. Now, and so I'll just show you like a couple more things that I think is really interesting. We're gonna.
Are those menus customizable, or it's just standard menus that pull up?
So if you notice, there's not a whole lot of menu. In general, you got a lot.
There's not a whole lot of options on those menus.
Yep. So like this is your starting lock. This is your ending lock. So you can add them automatically if you want.
You got to add your.
You can do motifs from this menu, but it gets really interesting when you come into the parameters. Oh, yeah. Maybe I should add my screen.
Yeah, there you go.
So it gets more interesting when you come in here to the parameters. So like right now we've got a running, but they have swing and shift. So if you notice here, it kind of added a 1 millimeter and a 5% swing. So if I go ahead and select that, it wants me to change. It wants to change the endpoint because now it's going to do 2 passes. It's going to run down and zigzag back.
Ah,
And so if I wanted to, I could come back in here into the parameters and I could say, well, I want it to zigzag down too. So I'm going to go 1 and let's say 10% shift. And now you've got, it's going to zigzag down, it's going to zigzag back, but I drew a straight line.
that's pretty cool.
And we come in here and you can see how many I can throw in there. I can even say I want to do an irregular swing. And now it's
just kind of being sporadic.
right. So what, like when you talk about, I want to digitize distressed, this makes it really easy to make it look like you manually threw a lot of stitches in a weird direction
Ah,
when you didn't. You just drew a line. So there's some interesting things that you can get into when you come down and you start breaking down into the parameters. Like, this is a bean stitch. Do I want to add a third swing to it? Your tie-ins, your tie-offs. What tie-in, tie-off do you want to use? Do you want to add a macro to it, which basically becomes your motifs? So now you can throw a motif down the line.
huh.
And it also does the irregular swing on the motif. So when you start drilling down into the menus, there's some really interesting things that you can do in this that you can't necessarily do in other software.
That's pretty cool.
But a lot of that comes from in here and how they handle it when you start digging in. And if you can save extras of these. So if you set up, you come up with something that's really unique and you really like how it looks, you can go in and you can save that as kind of a preset, and then you have access to it all the time.
Gotcha.
And it's just as simple as rolling in, coming up here and changing it to whatever you saved it to.
Huh.
So there's some really interesting stuff that you can do in there. And it really starts to shine a lot when you go into pairing it with the machine. Because like here I can actually say, you know what, I puts in an RPM command. I want my machine to run at 650 stitches a minute right here because I'm doing small text. And then I can, at the end of that, I can hit the button and make it go back to max speed.
Now, being that it's a ZSK software, does that can only work with the ZSK format?
From what I understand, I believe that that's the case, is that works with the ZSK format.
Right.
But if we go back into our menu, nobody look while I look for where I get that at. I always have to look. Don't look at me.
I know it's funny as when you're explaining to somebody, I've noticed this when training, to say, "Oh, you need to go here," you always have to like search for it. But when you're digitizing and it's just second nature, you just automatically go to it when you're in the groove.
Yep. So when you start coming back out here and you're getting into the machine, like if you have a borer, you start turning on these different functions. Whenever you turn on a function, it brings it up here, and now you have more that you can do. So we've got our head selection where we can move between heads on a design. So you can digitize, the first head, and then you can hit the head selection button and move to the next head and digitize the next head. For if you're trying to do like a really long design, they've got a templating feature that I'm not going to show right now because it's not in the software, but they've got a templating feature in there, so you can bring in a DST file, or you can bring in a left chest logo, and then you can add text underneath it or text above it, and you can drop text and you can merge designs. And when you drop in text, it actually does it like head selection. So you can do everybody's left chest polo name, and it'll turn on one head, so that person's name, turn off that head, turn on the next head, so the next person's name, turn off that head, turn on the next head, do the next person's name, turn off that head. So
nice automation.
Yeah, if you're running a multi-head and you want to do name drops, that's like gold,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where
absolutely.
you're not running up and down the line flipping the switches, you're hooping shirts while the machine does it for you. So it really starts to shine when you start looking at the automation and integration that they have with their machines.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a production plus there.
Yeah.
Well,
So
awesome. It's always fun looking at other softwares when you're using the same thing day in and day out, and seeing what's out there and what's different and how the overall approach uh, that the software developers kind of look at and how it's different. Um, if there's 10 different softwares out there that are exactly the same with just different names on it, it'd be kind of redundant. So um,
and it's like it's no secret that I have a lot of different digitizing softwares.
yes,
And every digitizing software that I use, it seems that the manufacturer has a different philosophy of how you're supposed to do things.
right,
And sometimes, like, you can utilize the same philosophy moving across softwares. It's just not the most efficient way to do it.
right,
This software, it's a different philosophy, but it also helps you when you go to do other things in other softwares, because it's never a bad thing to look at a piece of art and plan how you're going to go through it
exactly,
and have a
exactly.
solid plan and understanding of how you're going to do it.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that they don't necessarily, it's not taught as much anymore, because software makes it so easy that you can adjust it. And it's really easy to adjust it here too. But if you put in a little bit more thought at the beginning, it's going to save you time at the end.
exactly. I mean, that just
So,
digitizing in theory um, is just like that. It's if you're planning ahead and you knowing what you're doing, the small little adjustments that you make later are that's exactly what they are.
small little adjustments.
Exactly. You're
If
not,
you don't plan ahead,
yeah,
then you're making
you're not
massive adjustments.
putting the time in and then after the fact saying, "Oh, what was I thinking? I need to completely rearrange this. I need to add some travel stitches, take out travel stitches." I could save 3 color changes here if I would have just done this differently.
Yep. And you run into that with any software,
Right.
right? Like, there are times that you have to rework the whole thing, and sometimes it's just better to start over.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but hopefully that kind of gives you an understanding of the Basepac software, and a little bit that you're going to try it and play with it and see how you like it as well, Justin.
I am. I'm
Um,
going to play with it a little bit and see if I can get into it.
I'm
Uh,
a big fan of how their renders turn out. So
yes.
I don't know. I think I showed that already, but we'll go ahead and pop it up here. Um, Let me actually get rid of that object, and I'll go ahead and close this menu, and I'll go to their, hold on, let me hide the art. Boop. There, the art's gone. So that's kind of their render that they got. And it sets, you got your line width. So if I'm working with a thicker thread, I can say, oh, my line width is bigger.
Oh, wow.
So it gives you an idea of the line width. We've got our brightness of the light. So let's say I want that to be 50%, and my light's at 90 degrees. So maybe I want to change that to 45, and maybe that goes up to 75% because it got a little too dark, or 80%.
Now that is very cool how you can control the rendering of how you want it to look.
Yeah, and then I can hide the trimming and those stitches. But then it also allows me to, I can export the design as a picture, and I can set my DPI.
Nice.
So I know that was like a big thing, at least for a little while. People were taking digital renders and DTFing them,
Right.
or screen printing them, and this puts out a really nice render for that.
Right on.
So,
Well, cool. Thank you for taking us through that tour of Basepac. And you have anything coming up here?
may or may not be at Atlantic City. I'm going to be at SPSI event down in Texas, and then up in Minneapolis. I'm going to be teaching a class in Basepac, and I'm going to be showing the at least the templating head selection there. for how you could bring in a DST and do the head selection across that. Class on patches, one on threads. So that'll be a good time for anybody that can make those. And then, of course, I may or may not be in Atlantic City. We're going to see how that plays out. What about you, Justin? What do you got coming up?
Nothing concrete so far, but I know there's some stuff in the works in the talks
All right.
with the powers that be. But we'll definitely let you know once we have some stuff locked down.
Awesome.
But yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. We're both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night, everybody.